I'm a relative newcomer to the Laravel ecosystem. In fact, I've really only started diving into completely and making content for Laravel in the last year, and I've never been to a Laracon. In fact, this was my first one, and we just wrapped up day one. In fact, that's why I'm in a hotel room recording this, and I'm probably trying not to talk too loud because it's almost midnight. But there's just so much that I want to cover before we move on into day two. Things that I want to recap myself and just relive in a way that shows, I think, of how incredible of a community, of an ecosystem, of a world we live in that Laravel exists. Because I think there's so much good stuff that not only came out today, but so much good stuff that we can be excited for in the Laravel world. What happened at Laracon today? Day one. A bunch of incredible speakers, and there's probably going to be recorded videos. It was live streamed, but there'll probably be official recorded videos coming out sooner rather than later. It started off with Nuno Maduro introducing Pest V3, and while Pest V3 isn't coming out until later next week, I believe, Pinkary, which was built on Livewire, is fully open source. So if you don't know Pinkary.com, it is basically like an alternative to Twitter. But the great thing that I'm excited for this, and we might do a full video of a source dive into Pinkary.com, is it's all built on Livewire, it's all built on Blade, it's all built on SQLite. Just a bunch of great tips that we can probably learn from diving into the code itself. Okay, a bunch of great talks that I'm not going to be able to dive into every single aspect, but when the videos come out, be sure to watch every single one, because every single person did an incredible job of not only sharing what was important to them, but also just putting their little touch on what the Laravel ecosystem, Laravel framework, the Laravel community means to them. So Luke, Philo, Mateus, Rissa Jackson, Colin, Daniel Colburn did a little talk about verbs. I've mentioned on this channel and some live streams that I'm still interested in getting into verbs. I didn't quite understand it until today. While the full talk isn't yet, the full recorded talk isn't live just yet. One thing that I want to note within verbs, and you can find a incredible a thread by Owen Conti that basically live tweeted the whole Laracon day one. Daniel did a kind of like a live demonstration on what it looks like to build a game. So the Thunk team built a game for all of Laracon to play, demonstrating why event sourcing and why verbs in particular is so incredibly powerful. You have all of this state that just lives in history without having to do much of anything with your models. And so it has these different pieces and elements to it where you have, instead of thinking of it as models and migrations, for example, instead you have states and events. And in this case, Daniel kind of wiped all production data live on stage and then replayed all the events in order to fix a bug, an intentional bug that happened within the game. And that would be really impossible within a modern or like a classic model aspect, because you don't know whose score, in this case, in this game, when someone cheated, you don't know how they cheated, how often they cheated, how much of a score increase they cheated, and you don't know how to reset all that. It would be a lot of manual effort. With event sourcing, with verbs in particular, you have that history already stored, and it's easy to then replay it. So this gave me a lot of good ideas, and also just really clarified for me what verbs is all about, how easy it is, and I think what it applies to too. I definitely had a lot of questions answered during this talk. This will be one that I want to dive in even more, especially when the talk comes out being recorded, but then also just in probably another video of me playing around with verbs, really, now that I actually understand it. And then last but not least was the keynote. And this is the exciting piece, because there was, I would say, maybe 3 big announcements that I'm excited about in particular that Taylor kind of introduced to everyone at Laracon. The first one was, official Laravel extension for VS Code coming fall 2024. So Joe Tannenbaum, new to the Laravel team, along with myself, has been working hard on a VS Code extension for Laravel, a first-party VS Code extension to be able to have all the nifty features you would have in the 2 to 3 cobbled together extensions that I usually recommend that most people have or use for VS Code and Laravel, but all in one extension. So now you have things like command clicking into specific views or files and autocomplete, and even things like hover quick fixes, all within that one extension. So I'm incredibly excited for this, probably releasing shortly, soon, fall 2024. Next, Inertia 2.0. So there's 6 things that Taylor kind of talked about. Incredibly excited. Async requests. So you basically have optimistic UI within Inertia. So instead of having to build that out yourself, now you can just throw async as an attribute, and you just have that request automatically change the data. But now it changes the data client side first before it actually pushes it to the server. Next, you have polling. So now you can have polling within Inertia without having to do all these fancy hacks and workarounds. You have the things like visible components or when visible components, where it doesn't actually load. It's like lazy loading, where the component doesn't actually load on the page until it is visible on the page. And there's also options within this where you can say, oh yeah, the ability to buffer how many pixels away the data loads. So you can say, I want this when it's 200 pixels from the top of the page. Incredibly excited for that one. Next is infinite scrolling. So this like merges with when visible. So you can have the ability to, when the page is visible, or the bottom of the page is visible, then it just loads more information. On the server side, you have this Inertia merge facade, where then you can push data to the Inertia prop on the server side, and then it's like pagination in a way, where you can have that infinite scrolling. Next is prefetching. So prefetching pages on hover, on mount, and then you can also have this optional cache for duration. And a lot of this is basically Laravel's answer in a way to stale while revalidate within like Next.js, for example, where you have the ability to have this information that is updated, but it's going to stay updated until the piece needs to be updated. You can say, okay, I want to keep it updated until this specific time, in the sense that you're caching that updated information until you have this specific second attribute. And the last thing for Inertia, deferred props. So being able to set loading states on the front end, and you can defer it on the back end. There's actually a method that also came out within the Laravel announcement on this time of being able to do the same thing within Laravel. One thing that I'm excited for, and deferred props teases this as well for Inertia, you can say now within Livewire, saying, or within your controller or routes, or within Blade, for example, you can say, I want to send off this request, or that's a mail, or maybe it's like a notification. But instead of setting up a queue to do that, you can just say defer, and it just defers it to the server as a background job without having to actually set up a job. And the deferred props is similar in a sense, but it's basically having these loading states shown on the front end. It's not really similar, just reminding me of it. So deferred props would be like that lazy loading. Again, if you have this, you can show a spinner on the front end until that information is actually loaded. And you can also kind of group props together as well. So if you can say, hey, this user information I want to defer in one piece, so I don't want to display it until all of it's together, or I want to display other information even if the user piece hasn't loaded quite yet. So that's Inertia stuff, as well as like the defer option within Laravel that I'm incredibly excited for, because it gives a little bit more flexibility within Livewire to do things like send an email without having to actually create a queue. And last but not least, the big announcement, Laravel Cloud. From hello world to hello app in under a minute with Laravel Cloud. So this is the thing that I am most excited for. So a fully managed by Laravel shipping platform, to be able to say, you point your GitHub repo to it and it just works. It deploys it for you. It not only deploys it for you, but it creates the infrastructure from scratch. It pushes your application to that infrastructure and then deploys it for you, sets it all up with a Laravel Cloud link out of the box with things like SSL certificates and DDoS protection. And all of it just works. And the reason why I'm so excited about this, and you can watch a video here talking about or showing Laravel Cloud rather, is this is going to be, for me personally, the missing step for how I can introduce newer folks to the Laravel community. So now you have an option within Laravel Herd to have this startup of ready to go within Laravel, but now you can also deploy. So instead of having to figure out, okay, I have this project on my machine, how am I going to actually show this off? Now there's an answer. And it's incredibly simple. And for people who are new to PHP, new to the Laravel ecosystem, it's not any different than you might be familiar with now, especially if you're coming from like the JavaScript ecosystem, or if you're anything like within Heroku or something like that. So I am incredibly excited for this. And I think this is the epitome and the incredible future that we have to look forward to within the Laravel ecosystem, of being able to have newer developers, not just people who are new to PHP, but newer developers as well as people who are new to PHP, join and be a part of what is happening within Laravel, of having this incredible ecosystem, incredible community together to ship things, to build things, to create things, to make things happen, and make it happen as easy and as quickly and as effortlessly as possible. Laravel prides itself as artisans. We are all creators. We're all shippers. We are all builders. And that's why I'm excited about this. So yeah, Laracon Day 1 in the books. I'm incredibly excited for Laracon Day 2. I don't know if I'll have an update for that, but there's going to be some fun things. And I'll probably have an update for it. So until then, keep building, keep creating.